Growing up, Miss Congeniality was one of three movies that led me to believe fervently in the concept and idea of sisterhood. That there are young girls and women who would support each other and be there for one another no matter what, encouraging and urging each other to step out of their comfort zones and achieve whatever it is that they desire. Whether it's them taking on a case that would see them replace the asswipe of a law professor that was eating on them, or choosing to make a performance with flaming batons that they have always wanted to do but kept themselves from attempting because of the judgment of their parents. The first film, as I'm sure you've already guessed it, is Legally Blonde. The second one is, of course, Miss Congeniality. Both films were released in the year 2000, by the way. And for those interested, the third is, of course, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, which I did read the books as well in my teens. And although Legally Blonde did hold up for me entertainment wise, minus a few hiccups with the leaning into certain stereotypes that happened within the film, it was set in the 2000s after all. Miss Congeniality, on the other hand, although it gave me that pleasant, yes, girl supporting girls energy that I love to watch in my feel good movies, still left a very bad taste in my mouth upon rewatch. And this was all thanks to the character of Eric Matthews. Because whilst the film pushed the empowering message of stop judging other women for the things that they love and take comfort in, i.e., their IFEM presentation, it was also subtly conditioning young women, as a lot of romance at that time did, if we're being honest, to accept the barest minimum in our partners and love interests, a situation that Eric benefits from. And when I say that Eric Matthews brought the barest minimum to Gracie and his relationship with her, I'm looking at it from 3 points. Their work together, the protection he only offered her when he clocked his own interest in her, and the trust he didn't extend to her when it mattered the most to her. Now, for those who are maybe unaware of this film and are just hearing of it or never got the chance to watch it or watched it way too long ago and have completely forgotten the plot, Miss Congeniality follows an FBI agent, Gracie Hart, who is somewhat a loner that has been shafted into the position of one of the boys within the force. The film starts with a FBI sting gone wrong that leads to one of the agents being shot because Gracie prioritized saving a man's life over following orders, an infraction that her boss is most certainly not pleased with. And which helps us see from the start that Gracie, whilst very intelligent, is someone who does come to loggerheads with figures of authority within her life because of said intelligence and her stubbornness. A stubbornness that has served her well since she was a child, who, after saving a crush from a bully, ended up punching said crush in the face when he was so appalled and disgusted about the fact that he was saved by a girl. This is a very important setup for Gracie, however, as the film establishes that even as a child, she had what at the time would be considered more masculine traits. She's strong, she's a fighter, she's domineering, she takes no prisoners, and with that opening salvo, we can infer that child Gracie, who was beating up boys and grew up into adult Gracie, who was still beating up men, is most likely still experiencing the same sting of heartache and rejection of her being just a bit too much for the men she was interested in. Something that I think is very important to note, as it also explains why she actually settles for Eric Matthews in the film. But back to the synopsis. Gracie disobeys orders and is benched by her boss whilst they are investigating someone called the Citizen, who apparently sent yet another calling card to the borough where it's decoded that they plan to attack the Miss United States beauty pageant. Which then meant that to find the culprit, an agent needed to go undercover. Enter Gracie Hart, who is sent in to replace Miss New Jersey, where she then has to be turned into the model of a beautiful woman, which, like anyone who was watching couldn't see the absolute knockout that Sandra Bullock's before the transformation. But anyway, she's transformed into a beauty queen and sent into the pageant where she finds herself befriending her co-competitors and becomes even more invested in finding who the citizen is, which leads to her yet again disobeying her boss's orders when he orders the team to retreat as the citizen as they knew him had been found. Gracie, however, has her doubts and so rejects that order, and thanks to that, is able to save the day and save her friends. The movie ends with her getting with Eric Matthews and they kiss, and just in case you couldn't tell, I absolutely hated the ending. And maybe it's because I just recently rewatched Legally Blonde. But the fact that that film was able to keep the focus on Elle's win and not her eventual relationship with Emmett, whilst this film had to force us to sit through Gracie having to settle for Eric Matthews' annoying ass, just made me so angry. Which is a great time to bring us back to the subject of this video, which is the 3 ways in which Eric basically brought the barest minimum in his relationship with Gracie, and how the film wanted us to just accept that and root for their relationship. Because let's start with their work together. Due to Gracie's indiscretion at the start of the film, her boss benches her. Meanwhile, Eric was able to nab the escaping mobsters who had used the chaos of one of the agents accidentally getting shot to plot and carry out their exit. As such, Assistant Director Harry McDonald, aka their boss, decided to have Eric lead a team on a case, the case being to handle the latest threat sent in by the citizen. And in order to do so, the first thing the team needed to do was to try and decode the message that had been sent as soon as possible. And this is where for me the crack started to show, because Eric tells Gracie to share with him whatever information she's able to decode from the message, which by the time she's able to do so, forensics had already figured out that it is a message about attacking the Miss United States pageant. And what then follows was 5 of the most infuriating minutes of movie time watching, because Eric draws a blank when he's meant to start taking lead on what they should do next. Instead, it is Gracie who is sitting in the periphery, because remember, she's been benched and is weighed down with the guilt and disappointment of her previous actions and clearly desperate to redeem herself. And so she drops her ideas and suggestions, and Eric simply starts parroting everything she's saying word for word, but spinning it like he is the one who's had the brainwave. And I know that that's a satirical commentary on how a woman can give suggestions in a workplace and make her contributions, and everyone will be deaf to what she's saying, but the minute a man parrots that exact same talking point, is heralded a hero. And trust me, I would have been okay if that was all the satire had been aimed at. My problem, however, was the fact that they used the same man who basically copied Gracie's ideas and suggestions and parroted them back to claim the praise that was accorded to him as a result of them, without acknowledging that they were all from Gracie. The movie wanted us to root for this man and cheer him on as a love interest. They saw a Romeo, I saw a vulture. And that was the start of me rolling my eyes every time Eric showed up on screen, whilst cheesing very hard whenever Gracie got to interact with the rest of the girls or with Victor. Because having a man steal credit for a woman's work isn't cute and isn't romantic, and is just bottom barrel behavior that the movie glossed over when it came to Eric as a love interest. That he did so in order to bring her on board and get Gracie to work on his team doesn't negate the fact that he was doing the barest minimum in that regard and stood to gain a lot, because Gracie was one of the most intelligent people on the team, and he was very much aware of that, because he just 5 minutes prior was parroting her suggestions like they were his own. Then there's the fact that he was the one who nominated her to go undercover, which I'm not even going to go into how I kept thinking to myself in that scene where they kept popping up their female colleagues into swimwear that this is a sexual harassment lawsuit waiting to happen. And don't get me started on how the film basically has Gracie endorse the act in a, see, Gracie is a woman and can laugh and joke about this and it's okay undertones. Like, nope. Having them put the men in swimwear doesn't level the playing fields, because with the women it started as a way to ogle and then later judge and mock their female colleagues, and with the men it was played for laughs and jokes. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because of the second way in which Eric Matthews brought the absolute barest minimum into his relationship with Gracie, which I was so frustrated that the film tried to spin in a more romantic light, was the scene where Gracie makes it to the girls' changing rooms for the swimwear preliminaries. In the scene, we see the girls bustling about trying to get into their bikinis and one pieces before the judging starts. And Victor is with Gracie trying to get her tatas perky for the competition. And we hear the other agents all cheering and ready to settle into the show where they pick in on these women, including Gracie. And this is the point where Eric shows up to turn off the feeds and shoo them all away, reminding them that Gracie is one of their own and that they should basically be respecting her. And we see that minuscule smile on Gracie's lips as she hears that conversation. And that right there was the film trying to paint Eric as this knight in shiny armor who came to save the day. Like, that moment was going to make us forget exactly how they had chosen Gracie for the undercover position in the first place. The film has us realize that yes, Eric was starting to fall for Gracie. Like, she teases him. You think I'm gorgeous. You want to kiss me. You want to hug me. You want to love me. You want to smooch me. Which, I love that song. I especially love Sandra Bullock singing it because young Honoria didn't realize at the time. But yes, most certainly Gracie. I think you're gorgeous. I want to smooch you. But we already got our inkling into the fact that Eric was starting to fall for Gracie, which for me meant that that moment didn't actually show him being a decent person, but instead, as a man who was trying to protect the woman he was interested in from the prying and disrespectful eyes of others. Which then meant that that action that was meant to be interpreted as swoon-worthy, or at least the film would want us to see it that way, rang very hollow when I asked myself if he would have had the exact same reaction if he hadn't been interested in Gracie. Because from what we could see at the beginning of the film, he didn't have a problem then. What changed? He was starting to see her as a woman and was attracted to her. And then there's the final bit of him not trusting her at the end, which aggravates me a lot, because Gracie begged him to believe her. She's someone who had gotten close to the contestants, and like she tells Kathy Morningside in the interview with the Final Five, that she considers all these women her sisters. It wasn't about just solving the case for Gracie at this point. It was her being unwilling to risk even the possibility of those girls getting armed. And Eric, who had been in her ear and talking with her, who had seen her slowly change after entering the pageant, knew this. Or at least should have known this. The fact that she begs him to stay with her to ensure the safety of these girls that matter to her, and he chose his job instead. He literally tells her that the job pays well and is aiming for retirement and refuses to budge, letting her go on and handle things on her own. And And then the fact that what gets him to turn back around and return was not that he wanted to give Gracie the benefit of the doubt or trust her intuition or had finally found the hard evidence he needed, but because Victor basically tells him, oh yes, Frank's shady as fuck. Tobin isn't even his real name. He changed that after all the shit is pulled and attempted. That was what was the turning point for him. Not her words or her begging him, but Victor passing on the gossip that is accumulated from his years working in the pageant. That is what gets him to turn around. And the film tries to frame it as something romantic, like the gaslighting we had to deal with in this film. The reaches that the writers made to get us to the ending where we're meant to see Eric as this romantic who came back to help Gracie when Gracie's words didn't actually factor into his decision. I am so infuriated. And you know what makes me even angry about the entire affair? It's not the fact that the film constantly tried gaslighting us that Eric Matthews was the shit when we could see that he wasn't shit. It wasn't even the fact that the movie forced Eric into getting the girl and we got the kiss to cement their relationship at the end bit. Nope. What pissed me off the most is that they never had Gracie see that, call that out, realize that she deserves better, that this man ain't no catch or prize. Nope. Because the start of Miss Congeniality Part 2 had him dumping her. Like, because they realized that the rest of the world might have realized after 5 years that what they had pulled off in the previous movie was some gaslighting shit, and that Eric wouldn't fly as a love interest for Part 2, so they knew they weren't going to bring him back. And instead of having my dearest Gracie heart realize that she deserves better than the man who can only bring the barest minimum into their relationship, they have him pull the plug on said relationship, which is what then sent Gracie off into a depressive spiral that had her have that almost personality shift that we got in part 2. He dumped her. Eric, whose only contribution to that film is that Benjamin Bratt was kind of hot in the role, he dumped her. They had him make the final say, have the final decision in their relationship, like he was a prize and she was the one who was utterly devastated and struggled to let go, and that rankled. So yes, Miss Congeniality left a bad taste in my mouth, and it all boils down to Eric Matthews. But of course, that's just my thoughts and opinions. Would love to hear yours. Have you seen Miss Congeniality? Did you enjoy it then? Have you seen it recently? Do you still enjoy it? Because for me, I did enjoy the parts with the girls and with Victor, and just watching Gracie bloom was such a delight. It was the relationship part with Eric that smarted for me. But hey, maybe that wasn't the same for you. Would love to hear your thoughts regardless. Please drop them in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share this video if you want. Support me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.